been unbelievably fun. This is the culmination of actually 6 years of me and Jess talking about wanting to do this exact show and wanting to do it here in Rockbridge with Rockbridge adult actors. We have some phenomenal community theater with kids. It's been led by Blue Forest Theater, which is awesome. We have some great college theater, but we haven't had adult community theater for quite some time here. And so when we sort of had a confluence of events that lived together a couple months ago, we said time is now. So thank you for coming. This show is so fun. It was written, you may have read a little bit about it on the back. It's every single line is a joke, but you have to watch it 100 times like I have to get every single one. Even then, I'm not in 1895, so I don't get all of them. But as I said last time, for me, I love it because the wordplay is so fantastic. It's kind of like Shakespeare. It's fun as Shakespeare, but not nearly as much hard work because there's no Old English. It's very understandable. The exits are back there. There will be an intermission in the middle. The restrooms are behind on the other side. And thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the show.
Didn't you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano's concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Oh, speaking of the science for life, have you cut cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell yet?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Ooh. By the way, Lane, I saw from your books on Thursday night that when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining here, 8 bottles of champagne were entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
So why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I asked merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I'm not sure that I'm very much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders can't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Oh, how are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure. Pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well. I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of you being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
Lovely Gwendolyn. I came up to town expressly to propose to her.
You said you came up for pleasure. That sounds like business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
Oh, I don't see anything romantic about proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, sure, but I don't think there's anything romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one usually is, I believe, but then the uncertainty is all over. Hey, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. I ordered these specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all the time.
Yes, but that's an entirely different matter. She's my aunt. Nevertheless, you behave as if you were married to Gwendolyn already. You are not married to Gwendolyn, and I don't think you ever shall be.
Why on earth do you say that?
My dear fellow, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it's right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Oh, your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I can allow you to marry her, you must first clear up this whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by the name of Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name Cecily.
Please bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? Oh, I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. Very nearly offering a large reward.
Oh, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Oh, there's no use offering a large reward now that the thing is found. I just want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was a gift from someone named Cecily. And you just said you didn't know anyone by that name.
Well, you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming old lady. She's lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt who lives in Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
Dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt ought to be like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me my cigarette case back!
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Earnest.
It is an Earnest.
Ah!
It's Jack.
Ah! You have always told me it's Earnest. I have introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You answer to the name of Earnest. You even look as if your name is Earnest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my whole life. For you to now say that your name isn't Earnest is perfectly absurd. It's on your cards.
Well, my name is Earnest. In town. I'm Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that still does not account for why your small Aunt Cecily should call you Uncle. Come, old boy, you much better have the thing out at once. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention to you that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist. Now I am quite sure.
Bumpers? What on earth do you mean by bumpers?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to explain to me why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
I'll produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. It is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle for motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is this place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected as much, dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much either to one's health or to one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother at the name of Earnest who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in calling you a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you might come up to town whenever you'd like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid named Bunbury, in order that I might go out to the country whenever I may choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I have really been engaged on Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are perfectly foolish and careless about sending in invitations. Very absurd of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the sort. I know who she'll place me next to at dinner tonight. She'll seat me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the table. It's not very pleasant for me. Indeed, it's not even decent. That sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. What's so bad? It's simply like washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to speak to you about Bunbury. I need to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I may kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. He's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Earnest, and I strongly advise you do the same with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part ways with Bunbury. If you were ever to get married, which I find to be extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury too.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything these days. Such a beastly amount of competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ring in such a Wagnerian manner. If I can get Aunt Augusta out of the room for, say, 10 minutes so that you have the opportunity to propose to Gwendolyn, may I please dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
But you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's very shallow of them.
Lady Barkle and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
Well, I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you're smart.
Oh, I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. That would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions. I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit here?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Thank you.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. That will do. I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon.
I am afraid I must also give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight, after all.
Oh, I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
Well, it is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment. But I've just received a telegram saying that my poor friend Bunbury has fallen very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon,
but I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I approve in any way with the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday.
I shall speak to him, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. But I think I can promise that he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, if you'll kindly join me in the next room, I have a gift for you.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day has been, Miss Fairfax.
No, pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've had to warn her about often.
Gwendolyn, ever since I have met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. I often wish that in public, at any rate, you've been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it were something else. You don't mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Well, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts, real life, as we know them.
First, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't know that I care much for the name of Earnest. I don't think the name suits me well at all.
Oh, it suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolyn, I must say there are lots of other, much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No. No, there's very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. And besides, Jack is a notorious nemesis for John. I pity any woman married to a man called John. She will probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, the only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you've led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
Well, I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing's been said at all about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible feelings of disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I feel quite frankly I must tell you beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you've very little experience in how to propose.
I don't know, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing, Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. There's no place for you here, and besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Oh, pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. Mr. Worthing, I have a few questions to put to you. While I make my inquiries, Gwendolyn, you can wait for me below, in the carriage.
Mama?
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. In fact, we work together. Although, I am prepared to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to be married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased. I do not believe in anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. It would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and would probably lead to acts of violence. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly. I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on it for my real income.
A country house? How many bedrooms? That can be cleared up afterward. Do you have a townhouse, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I really don't know. You see, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost both my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me. He gave me the name Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was found in a handbag. A somewhat large brown leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake of his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I must say I am a little bewildered by what you have just told me. For a person to be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which reminds one of the greatest excesses of the French Revolution, and I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to?
May I ask what you'd advise me to do? I need hardly say I'd do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can't produce the handbag at any moment. This is my cloakroom at home. I really think that ought to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthy.
Good morning. Oh, stop playing that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwendolyn refused you? She is always refusing people. It is very much ill-natured of her.
As far as she's concerned, we're engaged already. Her mother is quite unbearable. I've never met such a monster. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man ever does. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth is not quite the sort of thing one tells a nice, innocent, refined girl like that. What extraordinary ideas you have about how to behave to a woman.
Well, what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
I'll get rid of him before the end of the week. My poor brother Earnest was suddenly carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say that Miss Cardew was a little bit too fond of your poor brother Ernest? Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily's not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes on long walks and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet this Cecily.
Well, I'll make very good certain you never do. She's excessively pretty, still quite young.
Have you told Gwendolyn about having an excessively pretty ward who is still quite young?
Dear fellow, one doesn't blurt these things out at people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I would bet you anything in the world that half an hour after they have met, they'll be calling each other sister.
My dear fellow, women only call each other that after they have called each other many other things first. Now, if we're going to get a good table at Willis's tonight, we really must go and dress. Don't you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Well, then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. I guess I don't mind the hard work when there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax?
Upon my word, Gwendolyn.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn? I don't think I can allow this.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any attention to what their children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Any influence I ever had over Mamma I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she could possibly do could alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination, and the simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address, the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Manor House, Wilton, Hartford.
There's good postal service there, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That will, of course, require careful consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Thank you, I have already.
You may also ring the bell.
Gwendolyn, you allow me to see you to your carriage?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday, so put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is.
You're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused about?
Oh, I'm merely anxious about poor Bunbury.
If you don't take care of your bumbers, they get you into a serious scrape someday.
I hope so. I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Algy, that is nonsense. You never speak anything but nonsense.
No one ever does.
Occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at the moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it to page 15. We shall repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays particular stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that's why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that
Unfortunate young man, his brother. To come down here sometimes, we might be a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I know you certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce an effect on a character that, according to his own brother, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not know that I would even desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really do not see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles things that have never happened and couldn't possibly happen. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How very clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned.
Oh?
I used the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
Ah, but I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dear Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
How are we, Miss Prism? I hope well.
Oh, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh, no, Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
Oh, I hope you have not been inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips.
Oh.
I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from the bees. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria, my name is Letitia, Doctor.
Oh, merely a reference to the ancients drawn from the pagan authors. I will see you both at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I do have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
Wonderful, Miss Prism, wonderful. Perhaps we can go as far as the school and back.
That would be delightful.
Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit.
It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German!
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Earnest Worthing, before the Albany Dump. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing is in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Oh, we'll ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here.
Yes, miss.
And I suppose you'd better talk to him about the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm afraid he'll look just like everyone else. He does.
You must be my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
You must think that I am wicked. I'm really not that wicked, cousin Cecily.
Well, if you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
Now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Oh, I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
Oh, it is much pleasanter being here with you.
I'm not sure how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
That's a great disappointment. I'm obliged to return to London on the first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Oh, well, couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Oh, well. I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you should wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
Oh, I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has absolutely no taste in neckties at all.
Oh, I don't think you'll require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Oh, well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I've received of Australia and about the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, cousin Cecily, if you don't mind.
I am afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. In fact, I feel better already.
Well, you are looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me! I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
You are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that any sensible man should wish to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear doctor. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a womanthrope, never.
I do not deserve so neologistic a praise. The practice as well as the precept of the primitive church is distinctly against matrimony.
This is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to understand, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
And is man not as cute, even when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often, so I've heard, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual senses of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. Horticulturally, my metaphor is drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing?
Indeed,
I have returned earlier than expected. Dr. Choswell, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I hope this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest, dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, you have my sincere condolences. You have at least the knowledge of knowing that you were the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults. But it is a sad, sad blow.
Yes, sad, sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the reason of death mentioned?
Severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Oh, charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us is perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to drafts. Would you like the interment to take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That certainly denotes a lack of clear thinking at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some small allusion to this domestic affliction on Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to any situation, whether joyous or, in this case, distressing.
That reminds me, you mentioned christenings, I believe, Dr. Choswell. I suppose you know how to christen already? I mean, you are continuously christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what a thrift is.
Did you have any particular infant in mind, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was unmarried, I believe, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear doctor. I am very fond of children. No, the thing is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But haven't you been christened already?
I don't remember anything about it.
Do you have any severe doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all, not at all. Well, the sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults are perfectly canonical practices.
Immersion?
Oh, you need have no worry. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed advisable, given our changeable weather. What time would you like the practice to take place?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that suits you.
Perfectly, perfectly. I have a couple of other ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins has come to my attention.
Oh, I don't think it would be much fun to be christened with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I must leave this house of sorrow, but I must beg you not to be too bowed down by grief. Well, sometimes what we view as trials are oftentimes blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am glad to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest! He arrived
haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Oh, these are joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to be peculiarly distressing.
Brother in the dining room? I don't know what this all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Oh, good heavens!
Dear Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all of the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think it's coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so very often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury. Well, I won't have him talk to you of Bunbury or anything else. There's enough to make one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit, all the faults are on my side. And I must say that I find it peculiarly painful, Brother John's coldness to me. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I'll ever do it.
This is indeed pleasant to see so perfect a reconciliation. Perhaps we should leave the brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us. Certainly, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
Oh, you've done a wonderful deed, child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I am very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algy, you must leave this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any bubbering here.
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can only stay for a week this time.
Harriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been called suddenly back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Oh, yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duties as a gentleman have never interfered with my pleasure in the smallest degree.
Why don't you understand that?
Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Gardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It's absolutely childish for you to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying with you for a whole week in your house as a guest.
You are not staying in my house for a whole week as my guest or it's anything else. No, you've got to leave by the 4 or 5 train.
I certainly wouldn't leave you while you were in mourning. It would be very unkind of me to do so. You would stay with me if I were in mourning, I suppose. I would find it most unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go up and change my clothes then?
Yes, if you're not too long about it. I've never seen anyone take so long to dress and with such little results.
Well, better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Oh, your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to cast the 4 or 5, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bumbering, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily. That is everything. But I must go and see her before I depart and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Well, here she is now.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
Oh, he went to send for a dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part.
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
Well, it is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? Oh, I'd give anything to see it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first laid eyes upon your wondrous and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
No, I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell him to come around again next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed to know that you're staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone in this whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course! Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, had formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under that dear old tree there. And the next day, I went and bought this little ring in your name. And this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy these for you? They're very pretty, aren't they?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad one. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my dear sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
May I read them?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I broke off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement really broken off?
Of course it was, on the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry here if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why did you break it off, Cecily? What had I done? I had done nothing wrong. I'm very much hurt indeed, Cecily, to hear that you broke it off. particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
You are a perfect angel.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
It does, with a little help from others.
I am glad to hear it.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
Oh, I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Do not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
You don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you'd like. Algernon, for instance?
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my dear, sweet, loving little darling, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not a bad name at all. It's rather an aristocratic name. Half of the chaps I know from bankruptcy court are named Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church, right?
Oh yes, of course, Dr. Tossible's a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must go and see him at once for a most important christening, or a most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away for more than a half an hour.
Well, considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I should be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Wasn't Mr. Worthing in his office?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Well, pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And, you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who is associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already, more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
Oh, well, how kind of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Won't you sit down?
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
Oh, with pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
No, I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, I'm glad to say Papa is entirely unknown. I think that's quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for a man. Certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, isn't he? I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are extremely strict, has raised me up to be rather short-sighted. It's all part of her system. So do you mind me looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
Ah. You're here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Then your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It's strange, you never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not certain, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I feel bound to state, now that I know that you were Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a desire that you were, well, a bit older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Oh, pray do. I feel that whenever one has anything unpleasant today, one should always be quite candid.
Well, then to speak with perfect candor, I wish you were fully 82 and more than usually plain for your age. Earnest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. But did you say Earnest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Earnest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, that accounts for it. Now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Ah, Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's your guardian?
Oh, quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I'm afraid there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you are under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Well, it is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident. Pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it's any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it should cause you any mental or physical anguish. But since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been very different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Oh, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I can't imagine how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy suffer very much from it just at present. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is no longer fashionable.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
The dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is that of my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own one.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to that young lady?
What young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must be some slight error. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon. Are you called Algernon?
Cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. Has been John for years.
Oh, gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I should like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An excellent idea. There is one question I would like to be permitted to ask you, Mr. Worthing. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn. Cecily. I find it hard to be forced to speak the truth. first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I must tell you, quite frankly, that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother. And I have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid, Cecily, it is quite clear that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Come, let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow after us there.
Yes, men are such cowards, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes. Yes! What a wonderful bunbury it is. Most wonderful bunbury I've had in my whole life.
You have no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
It's absurd. One has a right to bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense, Jack, for you deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady such as Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she's my cousin.
I just wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
I simply want to be engaged with Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your ever marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't see much chance, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
You can sit there calmly eating muffins while we're in this horrible trouble I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, you can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. Butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It's the only way to eat them.
Well, there's no reason to eat them all in that gritty way. Algie, I wish to goodness you would just go.
You can't possibly ask me to leave without having some supper. I never go without supper. No one ever does. Well, except for vegetarians and people like that. Guys, I just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30. And I naturally will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. Don't be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, perfect right to be christened I like. There's no evidence I've ever been christened by anybody. I think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. Entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, well, I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened! That is the important thing!
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I think it's rather dangerous you are venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You could hardly have forgotten that someone closely connected to you was very nearly carried off by a chill this week in Paris.
Algie, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there's still another muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
Oh, they're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence is producing an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
Well, that certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for having pretended to have a brother? Was it in order that you might come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have my gravest doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. It's not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations seem extremely satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. His seems to have the stem of truth upon it.
I'm more than happy with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no!
True, I'd forgotten. There are principles at stake. One cannot surrender. The task is not a pleasant one. Which of us should tell them?
Well, could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier.
That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are willing to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are!
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell!
Good heavens!
Lady Bracknell!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean? Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. You will clearly understand that any further communication between yourself and my daughter will cease immediately. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. Now, as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, Bunbury? No, he doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at the present. In fact, Bunbury has died.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I had no idea that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
No, Aunt Augusta, I did not mean that. I meant to say that Bunbury was found out. I mean, the doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. Now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Carter, my ward.
I'm engaged to be Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on here seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminal.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporting, Fifeshire, NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They are open to your inspection.
I have known serious errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I have heard that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, it will please you to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and measles. Both the German and the English variety.
Oh, a life crowded with incident, I see. I myself am not in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. Miss Cardew looks to me as a very attractive young lady now that I look at her. Come here, dear. Sweet child, your dress is sadly simple and your hair is almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter that. Kindly turn round, dear. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, oh, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl I know. I don't care two pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only those who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also call me Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I do not approve of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian. She cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can a person want?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is that I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no doubt upon the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Perrier Jouet Brut 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of an afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. Subsequently stayed to tea, devoured every single muffin. What makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, that I have no intention of ever having one in the future, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct toward you.
That is extremely generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Oh, come here, dear child. You will soon be of age and free from the restraints of tutelage, so I do not think the consent of your guardian is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come of age legally until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women who, of the highest birth, and they have chosen of their own free will to remain 35 for years. Lady Tumbleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anyone. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting for marriage is quite out of the question.
Oh, Cecily, what is to be done?
I do not know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew has stated positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a statement which I am bound to say seems to show a impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us could look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have missed already 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir? Is not that a bit premature?
Oh, well, these 2 gentlemen have expressed an interest in a instantaneous baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses.
So, am I to understand then that there will be no christenings this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
Oh, I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. Oh, they savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views which I refuted in 4 of my unpublished speeches. But since you seem to be in such a secular mood, I shall return to the church at once. As a matter of fact, I've been notified by the pew opener that, well, for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This might be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a lady of a most repellent aspect, remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultured of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. But what position does she hold in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must speak with her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is high.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism. Oh. Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, after the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing alone in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript for a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame, I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever burned in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in his perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction which I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I will never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me this so further.
Oh, Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing. Where did you deposit the handbag that contained that infant?
I left it in a cloakroom in one of the larger railway stations.
What railway station?
Victoria! The Brighton line!
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me!
You're not too long. I'll wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high social standing, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
It sounds as though he is having an argument, and I dislike arguments. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
There, stop.
I wish he would come to some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
More has been restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes! Mother!
Oh, Mr. Corbin, I am unmarried. Oh.
Unmarried. There's no denying this is a serious blow. After all, who has a right to cast a stone at one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women, O mother? I forgive you.
Mr. Word, there has been some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I fear that the news that I have for you will not be altogether pleasing to you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? So do you have a brother after all? I knew I had a brother. I almost said I had a brother. Cecil, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Johnson, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel. You'll have to treat me with more respect from now on. You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Oh, not till today, I admit, old boy. I did my best, though. I was just a little out of practice.
My own. But whose own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens, I quite forgot the point. Your decision upon the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the matter must be settled at once. Lady Brett and Augusta. A moment. At the time that Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
And the point is settled. I had been christened. Now, what name had I been given?
Well,
Let me know the worst.
being that you were the oldest son, you had obviously been named after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I do remember he had one.
Algy! And do you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were hardly on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The
general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. So yes, his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the last 40 years are here. Merriman, my book.
Lane, a muffin!
This delightful record should have been my constant study. Generals, Mallow, Maxwell, Ooh, what ghastly names they have. Bixby, Mobs, Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1849. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel. Colonel, General, 1869. Christian name. Ernest John. My name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it was Earnest after all. I mean, it naturally is Earnest.
Yes, I do recall now that the general's name was Earnest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
My own Ernest, I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
I am one.
Letitia.
Cecily, at last!
Gwendolyn, at last!
Oh, my nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta. Now I realize for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
thank you all for coming, and thank Jess and Dave. They coached us, they helped us, and they gave us freedom. And so we're just really grateful.